Okay, so this is Ed with Drone Force, and we're going to go through the Boeing 747-8 Microsoft Flight Simulator. Um, and this jet is very cool jet. It's very reliable. It kind of lumbers down the runway, but it's a lot of fun to fly. And we're going to show you how to set the ILS in a very bad storm so you can land in a runway. And it's a very short flight from Hobby Airport, south of Houston, to George Bush Intercontinental Airport. So let's go ahead and get it set up. First, we're gonna leave out of William P. Hobby, and we're gonna arrive at let's see, Bush Intercontinental Airport. Now, over here under the plane, scroll down to Low Altitude Airways, and then select your ILS runway. So we're going to select ILS 8R, and it's going to take us to the airport and land us right on that runway without me having to touch almost any of the controls. The autopilot and auto approach will take care of the landing, and we're going to change also the flight conditions. So we want it to really be bad. So let's change it here. Well, how can I change it? Okay, well, let's start the flight and then we'll change the weather, because it's important to understand ILS so you can fly in really bad uh, weather, and this will get you on the ground safely. So we're ready to go. We've got both airports put in. We've got it set on IFR, Low Altitude Airways, and we're flying the Boeing 747-8. Okay, so let's start to fly. Okay, so we're gonna start flying here. I'm gonna turn the air traffic control volume down so you can hear me speak. We've been cleared to take off from runway 31 left. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the cockpit. Now, one thing you need to make sure of is that you set your initial climb altitude to something that the air traffic control recommends. Now, in this case, I have a feeling it's going to be around 3,000 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and set that before we take off. And let's just verify what they want me to fly at. I'm sure they've told us here. Let's see. We're cleared. And let's see. Well, they haven't. Oh, yeah, 2,000 feet. Okay, so let's go ahead and take it down to 2,000. And there we are. We're at 2,000 feet. Now, one thing you can do if you want to verify the setup, Microsoft's pretty good on this aircraft of loading everything you need for the ILS approach into the system. But let's go ahead and just verify everything. First of all, the nav frequency is preloaded, and what it's showing here is that it's 109.70. Now let's just verify that with SkyVector. And you don't have to do this every time because it's pretty good about loading the correct ILS frequency, but let's just double check. Well, let's see. We're flying out of Bush, so we actually need to be Hobby, which is KHOU. Let's double check that. And let's just make sure that we verify the runway. It says, okay, 109.70. Let's go to our arrivals and departures. And let's click the arrival here. And it should tell me. Let's see, ILS. Oh, okay, 8 right. So that's what we're looking for, is ILS 8 right. So let's go back to SkyVector real quick. Let's go down to the bottom here and look at the ILS runways. Oh, I'm on the wrong airport. Actually, we're taking out of Hobby. We're taking off out of Hobby, so we're going to arrive at Intercontinental. So let's go and look at this again. I had it set up right the first time. All right, here we are. So we're going to 8 left, and there's your frequency. So you want to verify that your frequencies are correct. And we're going actually to 8 right, so I've got the wrong one up. Let's go back to Sky Vector, and let's go 8 right. I didn't think that frequency looked right. Okay, there it is, 109.7. Okay, that is the localizer frequency for ILS approach. So we've got that correct. All right, so everything looks good here. Let's go ahead and take off. I don't see anything else that we really need to do at this point. Everything is set up correctly. So we're going to go ahead and take off. And I'm going to release the brakes and power up the engines. And we'll start to roll down the runway. By the way, just so you know, everything's set automatically here when you do your flight plan, except your altitude, and the ATC will tell you what altitude they want you at. As you can see, the Houston skyline down there, and we're flying from South Houston. All right, we just hit V1, so we're going to rotate. And here we go. Go ahead and climb up to 2,000 feet. I'm going to raise the landing gear. And over here, you want to hit this first command, which is the autopilot, and it will engage the autopilot, and it'll follow the course that we've set up in the flight plan. So let's check it out. Okay, so plane is following its course that was preset. It's going to have automatic throttle control and altitude control. As you can see, we're still climbing. We're at about 1,700 feet, and the auto throttle is set at, it's not showing me here, probably about 240. Okay, so the autopilot is working correctly. It is controlling the throttle and the altitude. Now it's telling me to climb to 7,000 feet, so we'll go ahead and do that. Increase this to 7,000. And once we do that, it will begin to climb. Sometimes the air traffic control will kind of give you some odd directions, but we want to increase our vertical speed. So we're going to turn that on, and we're going to increase our vertical speed. This is feet per minute. So let's just set it for, say, 2,500 or 2,350. That should work. And as you can see, we're starting to climb up to the 7,000 that we put in. And we're on our way. And it verifies that you are set at 7,000, and this is your throttle, which is being controlled by the autopilot, 235 knots. So we are proceeding along, and this line here is your path, your flight path. Eventually the plane will catch up to it, and it will straighten up and fly the course that we've laid out. And these are your waypoints that are shown down here. Typically on a short flight, you don't see a lot of these. Most of these show up right as you're going into the airport to land. Now, one thing I want to show you, these diamonds are very important to watch. As you get closer to the airport, these will move down and center on these lines. This is your heading, it should center here, and your altitude should center there. Once that is accomplished, you turn on your auto approach and it will land the plane perfectly. Now let's see what air traffic control's got to say. We're at 7,000 feet. It's still asking us to stay there. So we're going to listen to air traffic control on the way in, because it will tell you what altitude to be at as you get ready for your ILS landing. And if you are too high, you could miss the localizer and you'll have to go around and try again. So I'm gonna leave it at 7,000. I'm gonna get back where we can actually see out the window. And here we are. As you can see, it is following the course that we put in, still climbing to 7,000, and it's trying to maintain 235 knots. It will speed up sometimes when you're climbing or descending, but it will eventually settle back down to where it should be. And that is the autopilot that's controlling the throttle. So far, the only thing I've had to touch after we took off was adjusting the altitude and the vertical speed. And one thing you'll notice, the vertical speed light just went off because we are right at 7,000 feet. It's no longer needed. And this is usually used to adjust the rate of climb and descent. So if ATC asks you to, hurry up and get to a certain altitude, you can increase your rate of descent or climb using this. But you have to turn it on and then adjust it accordingly. I'm going to turn the air traffic control up just a little bit. Oh yeah, well, we were going to set up a storm here, so why don't we make it really storming here. Let's just see what that looks like. There we go. Let's put a lot of lightning in there. There we go, 100% lightning. All right. Now we're in some really bad weather now. Lots of wind, lots of lightning, lots of clouds, visibility horrible. And if I go outside and look, you can see the type of weather we're flying through. But we're going to go ahead and use our ILS and do an instrument landing because of the bad storm. Let's go back into the cockpit. Now again, this is your autopilot, and it is going to control everything from this point until we get very, very close to the runway. And then we're going to engage the approach, auto approach. So you can certainly tell this is some pretty bad weather. So far, we're at 7,000 feet. Everything looks good. We just can't see anything. And you can see how bad the storm is. But what we're going to do is rely on our instruments and get on the ground safely. I hope. Now, as you'll see, this one diamond's still here. The other one disappeared, because we are not in range of the localizer. And as soon as we get a little closer to the airport, you'll see it reappear, and it'll look much like that at one of the corners. But as we get closer, it will center up, as will the heading and the altitude. Once they're right there, we go over here again and hit approach, auto approach. Now I've got AI responding to the ATC calls, so as you can see. Okay, so we should be getting pretty close. You can look at the nav map and see where we are. So we're almost there. So this is where we want to be when we land. Okay, so we're 30 miles away from the airport. It should tell us to decrease our altitude very, very soon. You can see how intense that storm is. Okay. So it's telling us to keep our speed at a certain rate. We're going to go ahead and decrease our altitude down to about 3,000 feet, which will allow us to hit the runway correctly. So the glide slopes when you enter these airports for a specific runway are typically between 2,000 and 4,000 feet. So what you want to do is make sure that you're within that range. Now, air traffic controller, of course, will give you a hard time if you're not at your designated altitude, but sometimes they're not real reliable. So we want to drop down pretty quick here. So I'm going to increase our vertical descent speed. As you can see, we're dropping considerably faster. The autopilot is controlling the speed, so we're not going to overspeed the airplane. And once we get close to, I'll speed this up a little more. Oops, wrong way. Once we get close to the runway, it will show us the appropriate glide slope, and it will tell us when we're right on course.
Going to 120.4 map 45. Houston Center map 45 is climbing 4,900 feet for 7,000 feet.
And of course you can tell that's not correct, but that's okay. And we're going to set the standard altimeter of 29.92. As you can see, the plane is adjusting properly to get us directly lined up with the landing and that particular runway. Now this diamond is still here. The other one hasn't appeared yet. Let's look at the weather outside. Okay, we're going to hit some more bad weather when we get close to this airport, but that should be okay because we're doing an instrument landing. Sometimes it appears you're going the wrong way, but you're not. It's just taking a specific course to line up correctly for a specific runway. Now this diamond is starting to center itself, so that means we do have a localizer. Now what we want is the other diamond to appear and end up right there, and then we can hit approach. We're starting to see some runway lights. There's the other diamond appearing now. I doubt that runway light is the airport we're looking for, but we're going to continue to descend until this diamond reaches right there. We are on the correct heading because this one is dead center.
134.45, map 45. Houston departure map 45 is at 2,800 feet, climbing 5,000 feet.
Yeah, they keep wanting me to be at 5,000 feet, but I'm not going to do that. We just saw one of the waypoints go by. So any time now we should see this diamond start to drop. And you can see how bad the weather is right now. Let's take a look. Yeah, that's telling me to go down to 3,000 feet, but I'm going to go to 2,700, which is close enough. And in the real world, of course, you have to do exactly what they tell you to do. There's another waypoint that we're passing. Let's go ahead and make it 3,000 feet just because they wanted me to. Okay. Okay, so we're 13 miles from the airport. Now you can see the diamond is coming down to center, like this one. It's very important to watch because you have to hit that approach button at the right moment. Now the autopilot is already adjusting our altitude. So here we go, it's almost there. You can tell we have horrible visibility. So the ILS approach is going to be extremely important. And there it is. So we're going to hit approach. And now the plane is going to land itself. Actually, it should. It appears we're lined up on the runway, so let's just watch it land. Now, I will, as I get very, very close to the runway, I will, of course, lower my landing gear. It's actually telling me to now, so I'm going to go ahead and lower the landing gear. Gear is down. Now I can't see the runway at all. But as we get a little bit lower, we will start to see it. We're at about 1,500 feet. Both diamonds are where they should be. We should be right on course for that runway. We're now at 1,200 feet. Our speed is 167 knots. I cannot see that runway at all. As you can see, it's really bad visibility. This is where you have to depend on your ILS system to get you on the ground. All right, we're down 700 feet. Should be getting right up to the runway here. We're at 620 feet. And there's the runway. Now, it wasn't until we hit 400 feet that we could actually see the runway. As you see, we're getting blown around a little bit, but the autopilot typically will correct, but you can't correct it yourself if you feel like you're a little bit off, just very, very slow movements. And here we go. We are ready to land.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
And we're on the runway. Our speed brakes are set. So we have landed successfully using ILS on the big jet. So I hope this helped you.